Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The nanobots in my blood were a quiet hum, a steady current of calm. That's how it was for everyone. For a little monthly fee, the world just worked. No stress, no anger, no sadness. Just a perfect, smooth existence. It made a lot of sense. Why live in a world of bad days when you could live in a world of just okay ones? My street was a picture of this perfect world. Every lawn was a shade of green that looked painted on, every house a matching color. It was almost too perfect. That's when I saw her. Beatrice. She was the one who ran the neighborhood watch program. She came down the sidewalk with a stern face and a clipboard tucked under her arm. "The mailbox," she said, stopping right in front of my driveway. Her voice was like glass grinding together. I looked at my mailbox. I had recently painted it a dark blue, a color I liked. It stood there, solid and normal. "What about it?" I asked. "The color is a violation," she said, her eyes fixed on it. "It's an unapproved shade. It doesn't match the community palette." I sighed, feeling a familiar annoyance that was quickly smoothed away by the nanobots. "It's just a mailbox, Beatrice. It's more than that. It's a blight on our community's visual integrity." She took a step closer to the curb. "It has to be corrected." Then the mailbox blinked. Just once. A quick, jerky motion. I blinked back, wondering if I had imagined it. But then it did it again. The metal door of the box started to yawn open, revealing not a hollow space, but a single, giant, staring eyeball. It was yellow and veined, and it looked like it was crying. It was crying a thick, black oil that was slowly dripping down the post and onto the manicured grass. A low, wet slurping sound was coming from inside the box. I stumbled back, my heart pounding a rhythm that the nanobots couldn't seem to calm. "What in the world is that?" I whispered. Beatrice didn't flinch. She just stared at the mailbox. "I knew it," she said, her voice a low growl. "You're trying to defy us. You've introduced a rot into our streets. It's a parasitic growth." I looked at her face. Her skin was starting to look tight, like a plastic bag stretched over something lumpy. The veins on her forehead were throbbing, turning a deep, sickly purple. Her mouth was twisting into a smile that was not a smile at all. Just then, Kalen, my next-door neighbor, came outside, a bucket in his hand. He was on his way to wash his car. "Everything all right over here?" he called out, sounding worried. He looked from me to Beatrice and then to the mailbox. His eyes got big. Beatrice spun around, her face now a grotesque mask. "He's trying to plant the rot. He's trying to infect our homes," she screamed. "Don't let him." I looked at Kalen. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at Beatrice, his face a mix of fear and confusion. He dropped the bucket. It clattered on the asphalt, but it wasn't a bucket anymore. It was a squirming, pulsating thing, its surface covered in what looked like small, chattering teeth. He kicked at it, screaming in terror. "My God, Beatrice," Kalen yelled. "What did you do? You brought a hive here. A living hive. You're trying to send your bugs into our homes." I looked at Beatrice. She was pointing at Kalen, her finger trembling. "That's not a hive," I shouted. "It's a bucket." She ignored me. Her eyes were wide with pure fury. "Don't you see it? She's trying to unleash the spores on us. The ground around her is crawling with them." I looked down at the ground between Beatrice and me. I saw nothing but concrete and a few blades of grass. But Kalen was looking at me, his eyes now narrowed into slits of pure hatred. He raised his hand, and it wasn't his hand anymore. It was covered in thick, dark fur, and the fingers were elongated into sharp, black claws. Beatrice was screaming now, pulling something out from her waistband. It was a spray bottle. She aimed it at Kalen. "I won't let you infect us," she shrieked, and a jet of clear liquid shot from the nozzle. Kalen roared, his face now a mess of contorting fur and bone. He lunged at me, not Beatrice. His claws were outstretched. You're the host, the source of it all," he yelled, his voice a distorted, gurgling sound. I ducked, the clawed hand swiping a whisper away from my head. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. Kalen thought I was a monster. Beatrice thought Kalen was a monster. And I was the one trapped in the middle. I ran. I didn't know where to go. All I knew was that my neighbors wanted to kill me, and the perfect, calm world I had been sold was now a brutal, ugly battlefield. I ran, not even sure where I was going. My lungs burned, and the pavement under my feet felt like it was shifting, a weird, gooey surface. I didn't look back. The sounds of Beatrice's shriek and Kaylin's distorted roar were fading behind me. I just kept running, past perfect lawns and matching houses, all of them now seeming like a cruel joke. The nanobots in my veins felt wrong. The smooth, calm feeling was gone, replaced by a jittery static, like a bad radio signal. I ducked behind a line of hedges. My heart was thumping hard against my ribs. I peeked through the leaves. Nothing. The street was empty. The only signs of what had happened were the streaks of black oil from my mailbox and the sizzling patch of asphalt where Kaylin's lava had hit. I was alone, at least for a second. "Get out of here, now!" a voice hissed from my left. I jumped, turning to see Grizz, an old man who lived a few houses down. He was hunched over, clutching a garden hose like it was a lifeline. His face was a mask of pure terror. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at something behind me. "Grizz, it's me," I said, my voice coming out in a gasp. "What's going on?" He shook his head, his eyes wide and unfocused. "It's the swarm. It's here." I turned to look. I saw nothing, just a small, empty patch of lawn. But Grizz was staring at it, his whole body shaking. "The nanites are feeding on the grass," he screamed. "They're multiplying. They're turning the ground into a breeding pit." He yanked a hose and a thin stream of water hit the empty grass. "I have to flush them out. They'll get in the house. They'll get in the walls." "Grizz, there's nothing there," I said, trying to be calm. "The nanobots are messed up. We're all seeing things that aren't real. It's the nanobots, I swear." He looked at me then, his eyes filling with a strange, sick understanding. His mouth hung open. He whispered, his voice trembling. "It's you. You're the host." My stomach dropped. I had to get away from him. He was seeing something different, something horrifying, and I didn't want to find out what it was. I started to back away slowly, my hands up. "Listen, let's just go inside. We can talk about this." "The nanobots." "You've been chosen," Grizz said, his voice now low, flat monotone. He dropped the hose. "You're the queen. You're the one they're serving, the one who brought the bugs here." I glanced over my shoulder and started to run again. This time I ran toward the small park at the end of the street. I could hear Grizz behind me, his frantic shouts getting louder. "She's getting away! The queen is getting away!" As I burst through the gate to the park, I stopped dead in my tracks. It wasn't empty. There were about 10 people there, all staring up at the sky. Some of them were pointing, their faces pale with a kind of terrified awe. There was a low hum in the air, a deep vibrating sound that seemed to shake the trees. "It's here," someone said, a woman I recognized from 2 blocks over. The judgment. I looked up. There was nothing but the usual blue sky, a few puffy white clouds. But the sound was real. It was getting louder, a rumbling drone that made my teeth ache. The people were staring, their heads craned back. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you see?" A man named Phelan, a carpenter who lived in a house with a green door, looked at me, his eyes wide. "The harvester," he said. "It's here to take the corrupt." He pointed a trembling finger at the sky. "Look at it. It's bigger than the clouds. It's pulling people in." I followed his gaze, but still saw nothing. The blue sky was clear, but everyone around me was backing away, a growing terror on their faces. They were all seeing the same thing. They all saw the harvester. It was the first time I realized the hallucinations weren't random anymore. They were organized. Phelan turned to me, and his eyes narrowed. "You're one of them," he said. "You're not scared. You're not trying to hide." He pointed at me, and everyone in the group turned their heads, their eyes now full of the same cold hatred I had seen in Beatrice and Kaylin. "You're one of the harbingers. You want to be taken." "No, I'm not," I yelled, my heart hammering. "I don't see anything. It's the nanobots. They're broken." "Broken?" Phelan scoffed. "No, they're doing their job. They're revealing the truth. The ones who are afraid, they are the innocent. The ones who are calm, they are the corrupted." A woman started screaming, pointing her finger at another man in the group. "He's not scared either. He's a harbinger too. Get him." The group turned on the man, and he started to run, but they were too fast. They swarmed him, their shouts echoing in the park. I backed away, trying to blend in with the trees. Phelan was still watching me, his eyes locked on my face. "You're not a harbinger," he said, and a cruel, unsettling smile appeared on his lips. "You're a glitch, an error. You don't belong." I ran, but this time, I didn't run towards my street. I ran toward the edge of town, toward the highway. I had to get away from these people. As I ran, a piercing siren started to wail in the distance. I looked back, seeing a police car with flashing lights coming down my street. It wasn't just one, it was 3 of them. They were driving slowly, their loudspeakers on. "Attention residents," a calm voice boomed from one of the speakers. "This is a level 6 nanobot update. The local network is experiencing a routine upgrade. Please remain in your homes and do not interfere with the process." A routine update. It wasn't a malfunction. They were doing this on purpose. The visions, the violence, the hate, it was all part of the plan. I stopped running, my breath caught in my throat. I looked up at the sky and then back at the police cars. The one closest to me stopped, and the door opened. A police officer stepped out, a calm look on his face. He raised a glowing device, pointed it right at me, and I knew what he saw. He saw something I couldn't see, something the update told him I was. And whatever it was an immediate threat. The police officer stood there, the calmest person I had seen all day. The device in his hand hummed, a soft, high-pitched noise. He looked at me, a polite but firm expression on his face. My heart was in my throat. I couldn't see what he saw, but I knew it was something terrifying, something that made him see me as an immediate problem. I saw his face. His skin was tight, smooth, perfect. It was the face of a mannequin, a flawless mask. It had a tiny, glowing symbol in the center of his forehead, a pulsing circle of gold. "Attention, citizen," he said, his voice a perfect, robotic monotone that came from the car's loudspeaker. "You have been flagged. Please stand down and await transport." I looked at the glowing device in his hand. It wasn't a gun. It was just a small box with lights on it. But I knew what it was. It was a tool to make him see me as the worst kind of threat. My nanobots were thrumming, a chaotic vibration that made my teeth ache. They were fighting whatever signal was coming from that device. "I don't know what you see, but I'm just a person," I said, my hands up. "The nanobots are messed up. We're all seeing things. Please, you have to believe me." He didn't blink. The perfect mask of his face didn't change. "Your biometric signature is non-compliant. Your anomaly score is 9.7 out of 10. Your presence is destabilizing the local network." My eyes darted to the side. The other 2 police cars were pulling up, their sirens silent but their lights flashing. More officers were getting out. I couldn't just stand there. "You're not real," I whispered. I could see the seam along the side of his jaw. The skin was peeling away just a little, revealing something black and metal underneath. The officer raised the glowing device. "Non-compliant citizen. Lethal force authorized." Lethal force? For what? A non-compliant biometric signature? This was nuts. I didn't wait to find out what lethal force meant in his twisted reality. I turned and ran, sprinting across the road and into a narrow alleyway between 2 houses. I could hear the officer's heavy boots on the asphalt behind me. I burst out of the alley and into a different street, one I didn't know as well. The chaos here was on a new level. A woman was screaming at a mailbox, swinging a baseball bat at it. To her, it must have been a monster. A little kid was on the front lawn, crying and pointing at his own shadow, which seemed to be elongating and twisting into a writhing serpent. A man was trying to put out a fire that wasn't there, throwing dirt on a perfectly fine lawn. This wasn't just my neighborhood. It was everywhere. I saw a figure dart into a garage. I followed, needing to hide, needing to breathe. I ducked inside, pulling the door down just enough to leave a small crack. It was a mess inside. Tools were scattered everywhere, and the air smelled like old grease and rust. I was crouching down behind a workbench when I saw him. He was sitting on a stool in the corner, holding a small metal box with wires sticking out of it. He had a few days' worth of stubble on his chin and dark circles under his eyes. He didn't look like anyone I knew from the neighborhood. "Don't move," he said, his voice low and calm. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the small screen on his device. "The signal's too strong here. He'll see you for sure." I held my breath, my heart pounding in my ears. I listened. The heavy footsteps passed the garage door, then faded away. After a few seconds, he looked up at me. His eyes were a startling shade of green. "You're a glitch," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. "What?" he sighed, setting the device down. "You don't see what they see. You see something else. Something different. That's why they want to get rid of you. You're a variable. You don't fit the program." I scrambled out from behind the workbench and stood up straight. "Who are you? And what's going on? They all think I'm a monster, or a host, or something." And I just saw a cop with a robot face. What's wrong with the nanobots? Nothing's wrong with them, he said, picking up a wrench and turning it over in his hands. They're working exactly as they were told to. My name is Zane. But they're making people kill each other, I said, my voice rising. That's the point, Zane said, standing up. He was taller than I expected. It's the trial of compliance. The nanobots were never about making us happy. They were about making us obedient. They're a control mechanism. He walked over to a big metal toolbox and started rummaging through it. The update, the level 6 update the cop was talking about. It's a test, a filtering system. It's designed to reveal the compliant and the non-compliant. The nanobots are feeding everyone a customized vision, one that's supposed to make them act in a certain way. If you act with fear, you're compliant. If you act with aggression, you're compliant. If you don't fight back, you're compliant. But if you see through the illusion, if you see the glitches, if you refuse to play their game, you're a threat. They call us glitches, so they're making people fight to the death just to see who follows orders. Not quite, Zane said, pulling out a small black box that looked like a cell phone from the 90s. The nanobots are designed to feed a shared delusion. Everyone sees a different hallucination, but they all share the same theme. The harvester in the sky, the blood fiend, the rot, the swarms. They are all just different faces of the same test. We're all seeing a version of a threat that only our neighbors can see. He looked at me, a grim expression on his face. Beatrice, she saw you as a host, because that's what her nanobots told her you were. Kalen saw you as something else. The police, they see a list of numbers, a flag. You and I, we're the only ones who see the truth. That's why we're hunted. He handed me the black box. This is a signal jammer. It'll interfere with the nanobots in our immediate area. We have to use it to get out of town. We have to get to the source. I stared at the black box. The source? The nanobot network's central hub, he said. It's in the next town over. That's where the signal for this whole update is coming from. If we can get there, we can shut it down. We can stop this whole nightmare. As if on cue, a piercing shriek echoed from the street outside. It was a sound that made my skin crawl. The humming in my head intensified. A loud, unbearable buzz. Zane's eyes widened. It's starting again. A new phase. He looked at the device in his hands. It's a shared vision, he said, his voice shaking just a little. This one's not a test. This one is for us. We're the next target. The network's found us. Suddenly, the garage door began to warp. The metal was bending and twisting, making a horrific screeching sound. A single, giant, glowing red eye was forming in the center of the door, a massive orb of pure light. The eye looked at me, then at Zane. The metal around it was pulling back, twisting into the shape of a massive maw. We have to go, I shouted, holding the signal jammer tight. Zane grabbed me by the arm, pulling me toward a side door. It's too late, he said, his voice flat. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking at something behind me. I turned, and my blood ran cold. On the far wall of the garage, the one we had just come from, a shadow was growing. It wasn't a normal shadow. It was a massive, spindly thing with long, razor-sharp fingers. It moved slowly, a creature made of darkness and sharp angles. I looked at Zane. His face was pale. The shadow was looming over us, its whispers filling the garage with a chorus of voices I couldn't understand. I had to choose, the screaming Helmuth on the door or the silent death behind me. I had nowhere to run. The giant red eye in the garage door stared at us, its pupil dilating as the metal warped into a screaming, jagged mouth. Behind us, the shadow monster on the wall was inching closer, its long fingers stretching out, dripping with a black, oily substance. I was trapped. I looked at Zane, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The side door, I screamed, but he wasn't moving. Zane was staring at the shadow, his face pale, a cold sweat beating on his forehead. It knows our deepest fears, he whispered, his voice shaking. It's a reflection of us. We can't fight it. Zane! We have to go, I yelled, pulling on his arm. He snapped out of his trance. You're right. Now! He pushed me ahead, and I fumbled with the handle of the side door. The door flew open and we scrambled out into the backyard just as the garage door split in two with a screech of tortured metal. We didn't look back. We ran, leaping fences and dodging around swimming pools that looked like gaping maws to Zane. and past bird feeders that had turned into nests of spiders for me. Every house we passed was a new scene of terror. A woman was screaming at a flower bed, hacking at it with a shovel. A man was swinging a garden hose at a mailman who was, to him, a creature made of squirming earthworms. "The nanobots are pulling from our memories," Zane yelled, panting beside me. "This isn't just a test of compliance anymore. It's a punishment for our defiance. We have to keep moving." We finally broke free of the suburban streets and found the main highway that led out of town. The chaos here was different. Cars were stopped in the middle of the road, abandoned by drivers who were now locked in their own private battles. One man was wrestling with the engine of his car, which he must have seen as a snarling beast. Another was huddled on the asphalt, rocking back and forth, pointing at the sky. "The central hub is just over that ridge," Zane said, pointing a trembling finger. "It's the only way to stop this." We kept going, the signal jammer in my hand buzzing with a low, constant vibration. It was the only thing keeping the worst of the shared hallucinations away, a small bubble of relative sanity in a world that had gone completely mad. But the nanobots in my head were still humming, and the images flickered at the edge of my vision. A shimmering heat haze on the road would suddenly morph into a slithering snake, and the sound of a distant ambulance would become the wail of a screaming ghost. We reached the top of the ridge. From there, we could see the next town over. The sight stopped me dead in my tracks. It wasn't a town. It was a massive, pulsating dome of white light that shimmered over the entire area. From its center, a thin, needle-like spire rose into the clouds. That was the central hub. It was the source. As we made our way down the slope, the signal jammer in my hand started to short out. The humming in my head got louder. I looked at Zane. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with a new terror. "They found a way to bypass it," he whispered. "The signal's too strong here." Suddenly, the world around us shifted. The trees on the hill twisted into skeletal figures with razor-sharp branches. The dirt beneath my feet turned into a bed of squirming maggots. And then I saw her, Beatrice. She was standing at the base of the spire, surrounded by the rotting remains of what looked like my neighbors. But they weren't dead people. They were flickering, ghostly images of Beatrice's victims. Kalen and his tire iron, Grizz and his garden hose. They were all there, and they were all pointing at me. "You brought the pestilence," Beatrice said, her voice a cruel, triumphant echo. She wasn't holding a clipboard anymore. In her hands, she held a scepter made of twisted wires and glowing circuit boards. "You thought you were a glitch, an error. You're just a weakness, an infection to be purged." "It's you," I said, a cold realization dawning on me. "You're the head of the whole network. You're the one pulling the strings." She laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "No, silly. I'm just the administrator. The nanobots chose me. They saw my drive for order. They saw my need for control. They gave me this gift, this scepter, to fix the world." Then Zane cried out. I looked at him. His body was starting to shimmer, to flicker in and out of existence like a bad television signal. "They're cutting me from the network," he gasped. "They're erasing me." He vanished completely, leaving only the memory of his terror and a faint, electrical smell in the air. Beatrice smiled, a look of pure victory on her face. "Now it's just you, the last glitch." I looked at the scepter in her hand. It was the source of everything. The pulsing light, the shared madness, the control. It was the reason my neighbors had turned on me. It was the reason Zane was gone. I looked at her, and a strange calm came over me. The nanobots in my head were still screaming, but I could hear a different voice. A quiet, clear voice. It was mine. I lunged, not at Beatrice, but at the spire behind her. I ignored her screams, her angry shouts. I reached the base of the spire, and without thinking, I grabbed a loose wire and ripped it out. A jolt of electric current shot up my arm, a pain so intense I screamed. I ripped another wire out, and then another. The pulsing light around the dome began to flicker. Beatrice shrieked, her body starting to disintegrate. Her perfect skin peeled away, not in a hallucination, but for real. Beneath her flesh, there was nothing, just a complex network of wires and circuits. But Karen was a robot, a machine, and she was fading away with every wire I ripped out. I tore out one last wire. The humming stopped. The blinding light of the dome went out, and everything was silent. The spire stood there, dark and dead. The hallucinations were gone. Beatrice was gone. Her ghostly victims were gone. But so was the calm. The nanobots in my veins, now untethered from the central hub, were no longer a calming presence. They were wild. My vision blurred. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in blisters from the wires. Then the blisters started to bubble, and a thick, yellow ooze began to drip down my fingers. I looked around. The world was not back to normal. A dark, roiling fog was creeping down the highway. The ground was shifting under my feet. The sky was no longer blue. It was a swirling vortex of green and purple. The nanobots weren't working for a network anymore. They were working for themselves. They were creating a new reality, one not shared with anyone. I looked at my hands again, and the blisters had grown into hundreds of tiny, writhing mouths that were all trying to talk at once. I could hear their words, and they were all different, and none of them made any sense. The world was gone, replaced by a million private hells, and I was the only one who knew the difference.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share.